Alright guys, M-Tech Guy here, and today we're out and about in the M5. I've got it set up with the SMG in the third shift setting, manual mode. Got the DSC fully on, got the EDC in the most comfortable setting for the suspension, and I've got the power button press, so we've got the full 500 horsepower, and also I've got the sunroof rattle in tow, as you can probably hear. I'm not going to edit that out because, as you guys know, I like to keep things real on this channel, and that's the reality of owning one of these cars. And I know there'll be some guys out there just like myself, they'll be watching this video and thinking, oh, you know what, that M5 makes exactly the same noise as my M5, so we're leaving it in. Anyhow, I recently put out a poll on my community page on my YouTube channel, and I asked the question of you guys: have you ever had a failure of your SMG pump motor or your starter motor? Now, the reason I wanted to put this out there, well, it all started with my washing machine breaking down not that long ago. Now, it's the third time I've had to repair the bloody thing. First time the door handle broke, the second time the electric locking mechanism for the door switch broke, so I got them repaired. And then just recently, the electric motor packed up, stopped working, driving the drum. So I pulled it apart, I put some new carbon brushes in there, and what I found was the carbon brushes I took out, they're only about 6 or 8 mil long, and the new ones I got, the replacement ones for the washing machine, they were like 60, 80 mil long. I couldn't believe how much they'd worn down in the space of time I'd owned this thing. So that got me thinking about the M5. You know, this car's like 20 years old now. This one's a 2005, it's 2025 right now, so a fair amount of time's gone by and the car's still going strong, luckily. But it did get me thinking about what electric motors are on this vehicle, what might experience something similar with them carbon brushes wearing down, and then, you know, causing you to end up in a situation where you could ultimately end up stranded, and that's the last thing we want. And any of you guys that have been watching this channel over the years, you'll know that the way I like to go about things is, you know, I have found these to be very, very reliable cars, but any of the common issues, anything that can cause a problem for you later on, we like to front foot it, get some preventative maintenance taken care of, and then that eliminates that situation of being stranded and all of a sudden you're in a situation where your car's no longer functioning, and then you've got to figure out how to repair it on, you know, sometimes you might be in a hurry, you might need the vehicle for work, whatever. So I wanted to put that question out there to you guys. Now, all right, you can do plenty of research online nowadays, looking at forums, watching other reviews on these vehicles, but as you guys know, and I've talked about this so much in the past on this channel, normally what you'll get is the majority of people just saying, oh, these cars are horrendously unreliable. And these are normally people that have never driven these cars, especially some people doing YouTube reviews or car journalists. You know, they'll have the car for a morning, they'll take it out for a drive, they've done a bit of research, and then they'll give you this big story of, oh, these cars are horrendously unreliable, you just be waiting for something catastrophic to happen, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to repair, it's going to cost you a fortune. And obviously they're looking at it from a viewpoint of you taking it to someone else to fix it for you, whereas, you know, you come to my channel, that's not what we're about here. We sort things out ourselves as and where we can. So pretty much every time I've seen a review on one of these cars, the one thing, or other than rod bearings, the other thing that they'll always talk about is a big failure point on these cars, and it's going to cost you a fortune, is the SMG pump. Now, that's not entirely true, and from my experience, it certainly isn't true. Now, the SMG pumps on these vehicles are incredibly robust. I've never seen one fail, I've never seen one even leak. They're pretty solid. So normally what fails is it's the electric motor that drives the pump, and that's considerably less money than what the pump is itself. So, and what can happen over the years is the carbon brushes can wear down in that electric motor for the SMG pump, and then eventually it will not be able to spin the motor up and it won't be able to do its job, and it's going to fail. Now, this is a 2005 model. This is the first year of the model run for the E60 M5. Now, when these first came out, that first year, they did have issues with the SMG pump motor. So what was happening was the carbon brushes were wearing prematurely, and what they did, they brought out a revised version about a year later, around 2006, and any cars that were built around within that 2005 period, they would have got their pump motors replaced either under warranty or recall. I'm not quite sure how they did it, but most of them got taken care of. As far as I'm aware, mine's still on the original SMG pump motor, so obviously it can't have affected every single one of them, but obviously there was enough of an issue where they did put a remedy out there to try and sort it out. The other thing is, what people have found over the years is the carbon brushes have like a stamping on them, and when they've been stamped, it causes the edges of the brush to sort of bulge out a bit, and this can cause it not to slide properly, and eventually it will bind up and cause it not to do its job properly. So that can be an issue with these SMG pump motors also, but ultimately 9 times out of 10 they'll keep going and going until the brushes have eventually worn out, like any electric motor with brushes, and then it's time to either rebuild it or replace it. And then of course you've got a starter motor, which is again an electric motor. They do fail over time, you know, they do get a lot of hammer when you're cranking over a high pressure engine such as an S85 V10. So eventually it is going to fail, it is going to want replacement, and to replace one on one of these cars is quite a bit of a mission, because the starter motor lives inside the back of the V of the engine, so it's not a massive job to gain access to it. Of course you've got to put the plenums off and whatnot, but the issue comes from how it's bolted to the motor, the bell housing. I think it's 2 of the bolts are actually put in from the back, from the gearbox side. So to be able to get at them, you've got to sort of lower the gearbox down, and you've got to remove the exhaust to be able to do that. So it turns it into a huge job just to be able to replace the starter motor. So it's not something you're really going to jump in and do as a 10-minute job, just as a preventative maintenance. It's going to make you think about just jumping in and doing it, you know, as a preventative maintenance job for the sake of it. There is a cheater way of doing it, where you can gain access to it from the V of the engine and basically strip it down in position, leaving the body of the starter motor bolted to the bell housing, and then basically take the parts off the new one and rebuild it in position with the new parts, minus the body off the new one. So that is a way of going about it, but again it is a bit of a messing around. So anyhow, there's plenty of nonsense out there about these cars. The majority of it is a load of BS, and as you guys know, I like to speak the truth on this channel. I like to tell you guys exactly how it is. So to be able to get the information on the SMG pump motors, failure rates and the starter motors, I wanted to put the question out to you guys who actually own these cars, who own them for quite some time, and just let me know if yours has failed at all, which one's failed, whether it's both or just one of them motors, and what sort of mileage it failed at. And then that will give us all an accurate representation of what the approximate life expectancy of these things might be, if there is a bit of a trend there, if there is a bit of a common theme. And we're talking real world experience, not just theory, not just, oh, I've never owned one of these cars, but some bloke on the internet said this, or I read this on a forum, whatever, you know what I mean? So anyhow, the results were quite interesting. So the majority of owners have never had to replace the SMG pump motor or the starter motor. Then following on from that, the majority of cases were just an SMG motor, and then after that, the least likely was the starter motor. So in the majority of cases, it's all good. It's unlikely that it's going to fail, but they will fail eventually. Now, what I did find very interesting was, with the mileage, it seemed like a pretty common theme that if they were to fail, the SMG pump motor or the starter motor, it usually happens around that 100,000 mile mark. Now, my car's got 130,000 kilometers on there, so I ain't got a calculator on me right now. I'm not going to work out how many miles that is, but I know it's a fair way off 100,000 miles at this stage. Now, there's seen a little bit of range there. Some people, it failed at around 90,000 miles. Some people, one of the items might have failed around 110,000 miles, but you know, generally it was around that 100,000 mile mark. Now, would I suggest jumping in there and replacing these preventatively before you get to that 100,000 mile mark? I don't know. I had a good think about it, because there's a lot of cases where, you know, people were saying, oh, it got to 200,000 and one of the items failed, or in most cases with a 2000, or in some cases with a 2005, one guy was like, oh, it failed around 20,000 kilometers. So of course that would have been one of the early design ones that then would have got replaced with a later one. So there is all that, where's that potential? One's going to fail sooner, or one's going to fail much later. But generally it was around that 100,000 mile mark. So after discussing it with some of you guys in the comments or whatnot, I pretty much came to the conclusion, I reckon the best way to go about it is, if you've got to pull your SMG gearbox out, and at some point you're going to have to do that to do a clutch, whether that be at 60,000, 80,000, 100,000 miles, 120, whatever, somewhere around that area of mileage, you're going to have to pull it out to replace the clutch. So I would recommend do as much as you can on the gearbox while it's out, because it is a big job taking it out. And if you're like someone like myself, you're going to be doing it on axle stands, the job's a nightmare, okay? So it's going to be a big struggle, it's going to be a long job. So I would replace the clutch, the flywheel, I would do the slave cylinder for the clutch, because they do have the potential to leak, and they're bolted from the inside of the bell housing, so it's not something you can easily do in position with the gearbox in position. Also maybe the PLCD sensor, the wiring that goes to the shift solenoids, the insulation on the wiring can break down over time, it can come off and then they can start bridging out on each other or earthing out. So it would be worth just resheathing them wires while you've got the box out. And then of course it's a great opportunity to do the SMG pump motor and the starter motor, you know, because you got it out, it's easy access, it'll add a bit more to the job, add a bit more time to the job. But I reckon that's probably the best way to go about it, just hit everything at once. And then, you know, like, you don't want to be putting a clutch in the thing and then like 6 months later your SMG pump motor goes, or even like the slave cylinder or something, and you know, you could be in a position where you've got to pull the box out again and stuff that, you know. So I reckon if yours hadn't already failed, pull it out, replace the clutch, get everything done, if the clutch does need doing. Now, if you get past the point of 100,000, 120,000, 140, 50,000, you know, whatever, and your clutch hasn't needed replacing at that point, would I jump in and do the SMG pump motor and the starter motor? I don't know. I think if I was getting past 140, 150,000 miles, I would be seriously considering it. And I know like a starter motor goes, you've always got the option of bump starting the car, push starting it. You can do that with an SMG or a manual. But there's always the chance that, you know, these things never fail at the most convenient time or location. I could be up in a mountain road in the middle of nowhere, no reception on the phone, I could be on my own. So although it could be a bit of a mission to get it started again with a failed starter motor, it's just a situation you can do without, isn't it? You know, it's going to be a big headache, so if you can preempt that happening and prevent it happening, that's all the better. And same with the SMG pump motor. Some of the feedback I got from some of you guys is it's not like it just one day you couldn't get it into gear and start the vehicle or shift it or get it going, whatever. It's not like you were stranded. It did give you a bit of warning. It did sort of fail sort of gradually, not over a long period of time, but it will give you that bit of warning where it'll just start to fail before it fails completely. You're going to either get orange or red cog on the dash there. Read the code, see what's going on. If it talks about the SMG pump pressure, you can test it, whatever, but it is going to give you a little bit of warning. So that's something to think about, guys. It is a potential issue that can happen with these vehicles further down the line. Now they're getting on a bit. Like I say, this one's 20 years old now, still going strong though, still going strong. So yeah, something to think about. Now if you guys found the video interesting or useful, don't forget to give it a like, and make sure you go and check out the rest of my YouTube channel for more BMW E60 M5 content. Consider subscribing if that's your cup of tea. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks a lot for watching.